There are some names in history that just send a shiver down your spine. And for almost 2 decades back in the 5th century, one name cast a shadow over an entire continent, from the steppes of Asia right to the gates of Rome itself. Attila the Hun. The Romans, well, they had a special name for him, Flagellum Dei, the Scourge of God. You see, they didn't just see him as an enemy king, they saw his invasions as a kind of divine punishment, a force sent from heaven to punish their own sins. I mean, that's a title born from pure, absolute terror. But is that the whole picture? Was he really just the barbarian warlord leading a mindless horde that the legends make him out to be? Or was there something else going on? Was he a brilliant political operator, a master strategist who knew his enemies' weaknesses better than they did? Let's peel back the layers of the legend and see what we find. So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start by asking, was he a man or a monster? Then we'll see how he built this incredible shadow empire right on Rome's doorstep. We'll get into his strategy, a diplomacy of pure fear, cover his sieges on the west, look at the shocking collapse of his empire, and finally unpack the long shadow he still casts on history. All right, let's just tackle that popular image head on, right? Attila, the wild-eyed barbarian, leading this unstoppable wave of destruction. It's a powerful image, for sure, but it's not quite right. The man who would become the Scourge of God wasn't some random guy who clawed his way to the top. No, he was born into the Hunnic elite. His father was a chieftain, his uncles were kings. He was a prince, groomed for power and leadership from the day he was born. And his education? Forget the uncultured brute idea. Of course, he mastered the essential Hunnic skills. He was probably one of the best horsemen and archers of his time. But here's the kicker. He also learned Gothic and Latin. And this wasn't just a party trick. It was a strategic weapon. Think about it. He could understand his enemy's culture, read their treaties, and exploit their weaknesses from the inside out. So in 434, Attila and his brother Bleda take the reins. And they're not just leading a bunch of raiders, they're centralizing this huge, multi-ethnic confederation right on the edge of the Roman world, creating what we can really think of as a shadow empire. Now, what I love about this slide is how it frames the Huns. They weren't just a nuisance, they were a legitimate rival power. I mean, look at this. While the Western Roman Empire is falling apart, relying on mercenaries, the Huns have this centralized, autocratic system fueled by tribute with this incredibly effective army of mounted archers. They were a totally different model and a direct challenge to Rome. And this is where Attila gets really clever. His go-to strategy wasn't just all-out war. It was something way smarter, and for a while, way more profitable. It was a calculated diplomacy of fear. He figured out he could get Roman gold to fund his empire without having to fight for every last coin. And you can just watch the price go up and up. It's wild. It starts with the Treaty of Margus. He doubles the annual tribute to 700 pounds of gold. But that's just an opening bid. After a brutal campaign, he forces a new treaty. The price of peace this time? He triples the tribute to a staggering 2,100 pounds of gold every single year. He was literally bleeding the Eastern Roman Empire dry. Then, right in the middle of this power trip, a crucial moment. His brother and co-ruler, Bleda, dies. Now, some accounts say it was an accident, but let's be real. The consensus among historians is pretty clear. Attila had him killed. With that one move, he took out his only rival and became the sole, undisputed ruler of the entire Hunnic Empire. So, with the Eastern Empire broke and a new emperor in charge who wasn't so keen on paying up, Attila turns his eyes west. And you will not believe the bizarre excuse he gets to launch a full-scale invasion. Seriously, this story is straight out of a movie. You've got this Roman princess, Honoria, the emperor's sister, who's basically under house arrest. In a moment of sheer desperation, she sends her ring to Attila, begging him to rescue her. Attila, being Attila, sees a golden opportunity. He decides to interpret this not as a plea for help, but as a marriage proposal. And his dowry demand? Oh, just half of the Western Roman Empire. When the emperor obviously refused, Attila invaded Gaul. This all led to one of the biggest, bloodiest battles of the ancient world, the Battle of the Catalaunian Plains. The Roman general Aetius, who actually knew Attila from his youth, pulled off a masterstroke, forging an alliance with their old enemies, the Visigoths. The hilly terrain kind of neutralized Attila's cavalry, and while the battle was a horrific stalemate with massive casualties, it was a strategic win for Rome. For the first time, Attila had been stopped. But Attila wasn't finished. Oh no. The very next year, he went for the heart of the empire, Italy itself. He burned city after city, creating so much terror that people fled the mainland into these nearby marshy lagoons for safety. And here's an amazing unintended consequence of his rampage. Those little refugee camps would eventually grow into the city of Venice. Then, just as Rome itself seemed to be his for the taking, he just turned back. Historians still debate why. Maybe plague, maybe famine, who knows. But the campaign was over. And it's from right around this time that we get this incredibly rare personal glimpse of the man himself, all thanks to a Roman diplomat who actually visited his court. This diplomat, Priscus, paints a picture that's so different from the monster of legend. He describes Attila as being short and stocky, with a broad chest, a big head, and deep-set eyes. But the thing he really notes is his presence, this proud step, as if he truly believed he was the lord of the whole world. And Priscus saw something else, something really telling about how Attila operated. At a huge banquet, while all his commanders are eating fancy food off silver plates and drinking from gold cups, Attila is just eating plain meat from a wooden plate, drinking from a wooden cup. This wasn't because he was poor. It was a performance. It was a power move to show that he was different, that he was above all that luxury. And then, just like that, it all fell apart. In 453, on his wedding night, Attila dies in his sleep, apparently from a severe nosebleed. It's a bizarre end. And the empire, which was built entirely on his personality and his leadership, just couldn't survive without him. His sons immediately started fighting each other. Their subjects revolted, and within about 16 years, the Huns were basically gone from history. So what do we make of this guy? He brings an empire to its knees, and then his own empire disappears overnight. What's his legacy? Well, it's so much more complicated than just a story of destruction. Just look at how he was remembered in later stories. In famous Germanic legends, he shows up as Etzel, a noble and generous king. But if you read the Norse sagas, he's Atli, a greedy, cruel tyrant. These two totally opposite views show you just how huge his impact was. He was an enemy to some, an ally to others, and a figure of absolute awe to everybody. So here's the bottom line. Attila didn't land the final knockout punch on the Western Roman Empire. That would happen a couple of decades after he died. But his constant wars, the extortion, the massive battles, they drained Rome's money, shattered its armies, and broke its spirit. He fatally weakened the ancient world, basically clearing the stage for the new powers, the Goths, the Franks, who would build medieval Europe from the ruins. Which leaves us with one final big question to think about. Was Attila the Hun just the end of the story for the ancient world? Or was he, maybe without even intending to be, the violent beginning of the next one? The Scourge of God, as it turns out, was also one of history's great agents of change.